Yesterday, I found out that Yulia Navalnaya, widow of Alexei Navalny, has been elected chairman of the international human rights organization Human Rights Foundation instead of Garry Kasparov. And right there I remembered this poem. You will remember, Alexei Navalny is killed, Yulia Navalnaya comes out and says, I will be the leader of the Russian opposition in his place. It's been a few months, I think, since Navalny's assassination. Where is the result of her work? Here, elected chairman of the international human rights organization Human Rights Foundation. Now he will be able to sit. Kasparov has been the chairman of this organization since 2012. Have you heard anything about the activities of this organization? In 12 years, have you heard how the Human Rights Foundation, headed by Kasparov, has been able to do anything to overthrow the Putin regime? I'm not. What case is Yulia Navalnaya going to pick up from Alexei Navalny? His cause was the overthrow of the Putin regime, not the Human Rights Foundation, right, as I recall. Not a fight for people's rights, much less a foundation. That is kind of like a fun to fight for people's rights. She just decided to attend a meeting. It seems that they decided to exchange the revolutionary struggle for regular meetings. And all this seems to me to be the final point in the struggle of the Russian opposition. Yes, there is the Russian Volunteer Corps, the Legion of Free Russia and the Power of Siberia, or whatever they call it. But everyone else sits endlessly in the forums of peace, the forums of Free Russia, and now they will still sit in the Human Rights Foundation. How was it possible? I thought it was an organization of some Russians, but I went to the website and saw that there were dozens of workers from all over the world, even from Ukraine. There are workers from anywhere, they are out there fighting something. The result of the work is unknown, as you might guess. Founded in 2005, this organization opened an office in New York, funded organizations, according to the website, mainly through shared donations, support from individuals and foundations. Navalnaya said that cooperation with the Human Rights Foundation will help her and the entire FBK team to continue Alexei's case. Navalny, it seems to me, did not sit on the presidiums and did not sit on the forums. He was in prison, not in any foundations. This, it seems to me, is just a depreciation of everything that has happened so far. To be assigned to this Human Rights Foundation, an absolutely useless organization, which is 20,000th in a row. Personally, I think so. I even checked, they have a budget of $12 million a year. Are you going to overthrow Putin and change Russia for $12 million? What is the point then? Why did Kasparov work there before, and now Navalny? Is it inherited? Did you find a receiver? It seems to me that some in the Russian opposition are happy about this appointment, but, in my opinion, you just need to cry, because in this way you flushed the case of Alexei Navalny down the toilet by agreeing to such an appointment. I checked and they do have a Ukraine Solidarity Fund. This Human Rights Foundation has a fund for solidarity with Ukraine, which is now headed by Yulia Navalnaya. Here is what is written in the section, the Ukraine Solidarity Fund. This fund of solidarity with Ukraine helps Ukrainians who are in trouble and highlights Putin's war, fights against democracy and freedom. There they have like we have three strategies: humanitarian aid, creative campaign, global platform, because we are lifting up stories from Ukraine that are there and the heroic resistance of the Ukrainian people. I'm wondering, but since you already have it there, now Yulia Navalny has been appointed as the new director of this foundation in New York. Will it start helping Ukraine tomorrow or what? Because she was afraid to talk about Ukraine. She did not say a single word about Ukraine. He is silent about the war. Really? And now will it be or not? Well, as if now she has this program in the fund. In general, honestly, I was so disgusted by it that, firstly, I found Mayakovsky's poem about sittings, and secondly, really, I just wanted to continue with the appointment of Yulia Navalny as chairwoman of the Human Rights Foundation. I decided that I would continue in the style of Mayakovsky. Not for the sake of Tchaikovsky's Russians, without any such solemnity, I will address the Russian liberal public in the style of Mayakovsky. Maybe you should ask Mrs. Novelini, you'll be talking to her on your streams anyway. Isn't it time to bring real benefits? When will you wake up, you deep people? After all, they are climbing and climbing on Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Luhansk, Crimea, Kherson on behalf of your half-done state. And then they tell Zorkin in captivity that they were doing a common cause in our occupied territories. Or maybe, instead of the Human Rights Foundation, the heroic woman will remember that her husband was not sitting in the Presidium, but in the Polar Wolf colony, the last time he was seen there. I understand how much I want to take Kasparov's place. Only it turns out that they are similar to each other. And also, taking this opportunity, to you, dear viewers, will you like me for this poem? Would you like to subscribe to Sheitelman's channel? After all, there is a spark, if not Lenin's, in it. This concludes the topic of the Russian opposition in this issue. You are watching Sheitelman. Today is July 2nd, and I wasn't joking when I said that it was important to subscribe to Sheitelman's channel. Thank you very much. Yesterday we added another 1,000 subscribers. Now we have 454,000. Join the ranks of the Sheitelman canal, because it has not Leninskaya, but Iskra. There is no story in this world more sad than Trump cards 454. Subscribe to the Sheitelman channel, put a like, and we continue to discuss today's events. And President Zelenskyy, in an interview with Philadelphia, was very emphatic. He said the following: Ukraine doesn't want to fight anymore and Russia wants to but can't. She has no ammunition. Russia's offensive in the Kharkiv direction has failed. As soon as the West stops fearing what will happen to Russia without Putin, then Russia without Putin will sooner come from this. It is impossible to help Ukraine with one hand and shake hands with Putin with the other. This way we will not defeat Russia. We are all those who defend not only Ukraine, but Ukraine, which defends all democratic countries to which Putin can go further. I don't understand why you need to give an interview to cheese, especially soft cheese. Philadelphia is also a soft cheese, in my opinion. For some reason, we decided to give an interview to soft cheese, but the thesis itself is very important. That is, the West refuses to defeat and destroy Putin's regime. Yes, Putin's regime has lost the battle for Kharkiv. Yes, he really ran out of ammunition, as Zelenskyy says. He knows better, as a commander-in-chief, of course. And now we need to finish off Russia. It's just to finish off the Russian Federation. Not to suddenly enter into negotiations with her, but to finish her off. Finish her off right now. But a completely different stage is coming. Now we're going to be told that negotiations have been going on for a long time, that everybody has agreed with everybody, that there's been a plan B, C, D, and all of that there in the president's office for a long time. I'll tell you this. Are there any negotiations? Surely there are some. Do secret Americans talk to some secret Russians? Surely they are. How many chances do these negotiations have? No, in all these conspiratorial theories that there is allegedly a Russian plan there, which in fact will go beyond the American one. But Zelenskyy is now gently hinting, guys, this speech, when he gives an interview to Cheese, he hints that let's better defeat them, let's better break their heads. We will not negotiate with them. And from today, the conspiracy theory that peace talks with Russia are underway right now will increase by so much. And you can guess why. Because Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, came to Kiev today. When I learned about his arrival, it was at this time that I listened to an interview with Lev from the By 2 group, where they talked about Russian culture, and he spoke about Roma Zver, a man who first opposed the war, and then helped the murderers in the Donbass. And he mistakenly made a mistake. I'm with Roma Zmeev, he said. I've been on the phone with Roma Zmeev, not Roma Zvyov, but Roma Zmeev. Well, indeed, a person who is both ours and yours is a snake. And this is how Roma Zmeev came to us in the guise of Viktor Orban. And so now there will be a lot of stories that, well, that's it, he brought a peace plan, that President Zelensky meant him. When it's a sin, we need a mediator like Turkey, who will agree, and that's what the body will be, this mediator between Ukraine and Russia, and will be able to restore peace, because, they say, he has it there. He's the one who now Hungary chairs the European Union, especially since the words that Orban told us, they are, in general, in this gate. He announced the first steps towards peace. What did he say? He gave an interview before leaving. If you look at tomorrow's press, tomorrow's today, I spoke about today, you will already see the first steps towards peace. After that, it became known that he was going to Kiev, and this, apparently, should be considered as the first steps towards peace here. He noted that the Americans should not be left aside when it comes to the future of the European Union and the Russian-Ukrainian war. He believes that we will have to prepare for a situation when sooner or later Russia and America will agree with each other. In such a situation, it is important to understand who will protect our interests in Europe and what interests we need to represent. Orban adds that the Hungarian presidency is not in a position to answer these questions on its own. He emphasizes that now they are helping Ukraine in its fight against Putin, but tomorrow, perhaps, the Americans will come to an agreement with the Russians, and Hungary will be forced to change its position. Therefore, Orban says, we must prepare to help not only militarily, but also in other aspects. Helping not to fight is the same as not helping to fight, and not helping to fight is the same as helping to lose. It is not for nothing that Orban's party and Orban's country, Hungary, chose for themselves. You see, I stipulate, Roma chose, 1. We have chosen the phrase, make EU great again and make Europe great as the slogan for their presidency of the European Union, which began yesterday. That is, a paraphrase taken from Donald Trump's slogan in the elections. This is such a trip. And I'll tell you that I don't. I'm not. Don't look for me on Kristianik today. I will not walk there. I categorically refuse to meet with Orban. I saw Johnson. With Cameron, yes. Not the one that Titanic filmed, the one the foreign secretary did, but no. Orban is just strict. I'll tell you, I'm not looking for Sheitelman in the negotiations, don't look for him. In general, we now lacked only the Prime Minister of Slovakia, I think, this very Fico, because 14% of Slovaks want Russia to defeat Ukraine. And most of them are just Fico's voters. But there is good news for us, only 14%, which is quite a lot for a European civilized country, want the victory of hellish fascist Russia. However, 33% want Ukraine to win. The rest hesitate and want the conflict to end with a temporary peace without a clear victory for either side. That is, they are in favor of a truce. But with one hand, in this case, we are talking about one and the other hand in a good way, because Slovakia decided to take up the supply of weapons to Ukraine. The preparation of shells for Ukrainian artillery was announced by the country's President Peter Pellegrini. He recalled that Slovakia supplies electricity to Ukraine to make up for the shortage due to the shelling of Russia and Ukrainian thermal power plants, and has now begun to supply us with artillery shells as well. Therefore, it turns out that he is not so much a serpent Roman Zmev. Well, of course, Roman Zmev, Slovakia, in general, is not such an enemy as they try to portray him. But if we are already talking about interest, let's discuss Ukraine. We are now starting a showdown. They are trying to undermine us, to be honest. Disbalance plan is in action. They are trying to shake us up through these stories about peace plans. That now, why are you fighting? All the Americans will agree with the Russians. They will not agree. They will not agree now. They will not agree now. They will not agree now. And gradually we are being shaken up. We have 44% of Ukrainians believe in the unity of society, 44% and 15% see disunity. But at the same time, again, 44 and 15, like in Slovakia, is it a lot? 14% want Russia to win, very much, but still only 30% want Ukraine to win. So also here, 15% see disunity in society, 44% see cohesion, in equal measure 36% consider elements of the only disunity, then see disunity in Ukraine. In case of corruption, 16% consider disunity. And what is the corruption and disunity? That on different sides, we have corrupt people? Yes. There are many of them, but they are not 20%. These are some individual people, corrupt officials. And we are all against corruption. I don't understand what the disunity is. On the language issue, 14% see disunity. A lot. To be honest, I did not see any disunity on the language issue. Apparently, I haven't come across it yet. Well, and distrust of the actions of the authorities. 13% see disunity. This is the disunity between the authorities and the people. Here I agree. What is growing in our country is the disunity between the authorities and the people. I do not see disunity among the people yet, as long as everyone knows that we have the same enemies, the Russians, the Russian Federation, that we need to fight them, and here, in general, everyone is united. But I can say that the disunity between the government and society is growing. Anyway, we still have a fairly high degree of public confidence in the authorities, more than we had before the war, still more than we had before the war. Still more than it was before the war. Here is one of the letters under my Friday stream. Remember, I talked about why I still support the authorities in Ukraine. And here the girl writes, in February 22nd I worked outside Ukraine. On February 24th 22, I read and watched the news with horror. I called my children in Kiev and did not know what would happen next. And yes, given the bitter experience, I read with surprise, joy and hope that our government does not sit idly by and did not surrender to the mercy of a large country. They did not leave our land, but stood up to defend their homeland. Our unarmed men stop tanks, throw Molotov cocktails and are not going to surrender. When Klivniuk sang "Oh" in the meadow in empty Kiev, Red Viburnum, I felt proud of our country and our people. This sense of self-identity, which Portnikov talks about, allowed me to return to Ukraine in March 2022. And since April 13, 2022, I have been constantly in Kiev. And I know that our Ukraine has already won, because we are on the side of good. Elena writes to me from Kiev. I'll tell you that, after all, yes, Portnikov is right about self-identity, and Elena is right about this unity, which we still have. In Irpin, near Kiev, there was a new example of unity. Women began to work as minibus drivers due to the lack of men who went to war. Features became a woman, went on Route 389. This experience is being adopted in other cities. For me, this is a symbol of the unity of Ukraine. Men are at war, and women drive minibuses. The women did not say, that's it, all the men are at war, don't go minibuses, I'll go to Slovakia. No, women got behind the wheel of minibuses. It seems to me that there is a lot of symbolism here. Now you can find out what the men in the war are telling there. Yesterday was not the best day in our military history. I don't know all the details, but the Russians reported, these are the Russians, I don't trust them, that as a result of a strike on the airfield in Mirhorod, they destroyed 5 of our Su-25 aircraft in the Poltava region. They attack with Iskander-M. Our sources, although not 100%, confirm that several of our aircraft were indeed destroyed by a Russian missile strike. The pilots were not injured. I will not refer to these sources directly, because this information is from Sheitelman and is therefore unreliable in this situation. However, you can't ignore such events, because I can't remain silent on the channel, talking only about victories. I hope that more planes will arrive soon, as I suspect that they were the ones who dropped Storm Shadow and Scalp missiles on the heads of Russian vehicles. Rogozin, oddly enough, tells us interesting things. I will now talk about Rogozin in a positive sense. I believe that this is already a great personal experience, that you just allowed me to be kept and subscribe to the Strelman channel for the fact that when I have to, what to do, I have to talk about Rogozin in a positive context. And I will do it when necessary, for the common cause. So, Rogozin. Who is Rogozin? On Friday in Donetsk, in a restaurant, Rogozin was wounded in the ass by a fragment of a shell from the Ukrainian armed forces, known for his chosenness from the occupied Zaporizhzhia region. In Russia, he is known as a famous senator. Rogozin reported that Ukrainian forces are using attack drones and setting fire to fields and forest belts in the Vasilievka area when they are trying to break into the rear of Russian positions. Rogozin does not like the tactics, and certainly does not like Ukraine, which is actively using attack drones in the Vasilievka area.
Украинские силы используют ударные дроны «Баба-Яга» при попытках заходить в тыл российских позиций и поджигания полей и лесополос. Он отметил, что ему не нравится такая тактика ВСУ. Не, ну а кому она понравится? Она только ВСУ и нравится. Нашим противникам такая тактика, безусловно, не нравится.
He told about this on his Telegram channel. Baba Yaga uses drones along the shore of the former Kakhovka reservoir. There is no bank there now, of course, because there is no reservoir, but along this conditional line, the city of Vasilievka is located near these shores, the so-called. From there, they are trying to enter the rear of Russian positions. During the day, these drones are used to set fire to fields. That is, we burn the Russians, set fire to the grass under them. Literally, in order for the Ukrainian land to burn under the Russians, the ground must burn under the feet of the occupiers, and we are doing this now. That's right. It is best to burn grass, forest and everything else, together with the Russians in such weather, since they are sitting in the forests. We need to do it right. If we had an attack, we would have done it. I think we burned in this way, Rogozin writes. The enemy began demoning this sector of the front, provoking fires in fields and forest belts. There, of course, everything around is mined, and when all this is burning, these mines explode. For military specialists, such tactics of the armed forces of Ukraine should say something. I don't like all this, Rogozin wrote. He explained that Baba Yaga is such an attack drone that reaches speeds of up to 60 km per hour, carries 6 ammunition, and an FPV drone flies next to it, which can still dive on the target and drop ammunition on it. Such a drone is faster and faster, but it runs out of battery faster. Then, returning to the base, he exchanges it for a new one. Baba Yaga can be accompanied by kamikaze drones. About 2 weeks ago, he said, this is the so-called Senator Rogozin, that the Ukrainian military began to use Baba Yaga drones at night for remote mining on frontline roads. And then he wrote that this is usually done before an offensive. Why did I suddenly decide to quote Rogozin? I took such a vile step, for which, let me remind you, you should, like me, subscribe to the Sheitelman channel. Maybe really? Maybe he was right? Well, maybe that very unique day when they did not lie twice. They did not lie that they hit our airfield, unfortunately. But, perhaps, he is not lying when he says that we are starting an offensive. It is time for time. This is the conclusion made by one of the high-ranking US military strategists, and then expressed by this Senator Graham. With the Russian offensive halted, it's time for a Ukrainian offensive. Sorry for the tautology. This is the first thing. Secondly, Zelenskyy said in an interview with the United States that we stopped the Russians, and now the whole world must unite to destroy the Putin regime to give us more support and confidence in defeating Russia. This is the second factor. The third factor is that I really want to believe that we will still launch our offensive, which we have not announced, but the time has come in the summer. In total, the troops already number 545,000 Russians. As you can see, we present this data according to our general staff, and these estimates are confirmed by the CIA, the Pentagon, and British intelligence. That is, the press is gradually catching up, and now the figure of 500,000 killed and wounded Russians. I have been saying for a long time that these are not killed Russians, these are killed and wounded, disabled Russians. This is 545,000. And gradually Western figures are catching up with these figures. 8 tanks, 16 armored personnel carriers, 56 artillery pieces, 3 multiple launch rocket systems, 74 units of equipment and tanks. 74 units is also a lot somehow. Many, 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 many. But where will this blow be? Where will this offensive be? Either Crimea should still be strangled further and it is possible to advance on it, it is possible to land troops, or Zaporozhye, as Rogozin predicts, because it is unlikely that we will go to Belgorod. What should we do with this Belgorod? I don't believe it. Will we take Rostov? No. Those who take Rostov have bad karma in Russia, as far as I know. We will not take Rostov. Therefore, either the Zaporozhye direction, that is, in the same direction, to Berdyansk, to Tokmak, or the Crimea. And in Crimea, the consequences of our attack occurred, when a missile exploded and destroyed the civilian occupiers on the beach. The Russian tourism industry reported that bookings for new tours to Crimea fell by a quarter. That is, killing them led to a reduction in armor by a quarter. Still 3/4 believe that this is a good and correct place to relax, where you can come and relax under the missiles. At the same time, the current level of booking remains higher than last year, and sales for August-October remain very high. This shows that the opinion that the place is suitable for recreation has not faded. They did not listen to Rogozin. They are not stopped by the warning of the armed forces of Ukraine that it is not worth going there. Listen to Rogozin. He warns that Baba Yaga will fly to you in a blue helicopter and show you films that you have never seen for free.
Предупреждение вооруженных сил Украины о том, что не надо туда ходить. Никто не слушает. Ну послушайте Рогозина, он вам прямо говорит, что Баба Яга к вам прилетит в голубом вертолете и бесплатно покажет кино.
Or are you all counting on this? Russian tourists who book tours to Crimea for August-October. Maybe it will no longer be occupied in October. Then come. By the way, that's when I recommend going. If, for example, you have a tour for October, and in September the armed forces of Ukraine will already liberate Crimea, then drive up. We have unique offers for you for a sanatorium resort holiday. We provide the opportunity to enjoy a spa stay. However, the Russians are trying to complicate holidays in Crimea by deploying an anti-missile system on the beach right in Sevastopol. Our partisans reported that a Tor M2 anti-aircraft missile system was installed on the beach. Well, like on the beach, there is such a rock above the beach. There is an anti-aircraft missile system on the rock. So, maybe, if it poured down, then, as they say, I spat from the Eiffel Tower on the heads of careless Parisians, on the heads of careless Russians. And I spat from the Eiffel Tower on the heads of careless Russians. Today, there was another attack. At night, we attacked Sevastopol again. This was announced by the occupation Gorleiter Sevastopol Razvajiv. He says that 3 cars were damaged, fences caught fire, windows were broken. In total, 5 air targets were shot down over the waters of the Balaklava district. Well, since this is the story, we are waiting for photos of air defense systems tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. Perhaps the same TOR complex, about which our partisans reported so much, perhaps it is no longer Tor, but Rod in reverse. Well, I mean, you understand what we did to him, and it is likely that we will simply find out about the hits a little later. Another strange military news. Sri Lanka demanded compensation from Russia for the citizens of its country sent to the war in Ukraine. The families of 17 dead and injured Sri Lankans did not receive payments, and some faced early termination of contracts and were left without payments. This is how Sri Lanka demands compensation from the Russian Federation at the state level. When I say that Russia will pay for this war for decades, you understand, well, we are our international courts, with tribunals created by PACE, OSCE, with the Hague Tribunal. These are only criminal prosecutions, then commercial courts will begin. Sri Lanka will file an international court against the Russian Federation. And Korea? Yes, it would seem, North Korea, Kim Jong-un, all that. And Kim Jong-un's regime is not eternal. And the citizens of North Korea, whom the Russians are going to send to the occupied territories to dig trenches, I have such a hint. They are also citizens of South Korea. According to the laws of South Korea, all North Korea is considered an occupied territory, so South Korean citizens live there according to South Korean laws. And I think that some kind person who comes to South Korea from time to time could suggest that the South Korean government consider filing a lawsuit in an international court. This is due to the fact that South Korean citizens are forcibly sent to the Donbass to perform some work there, which can be considered as the use of slave labor. Again, I'll give you a hint. Now there are still people whose slave labor was used in Nazi Germany, and they are now receiving their honest wages earned in factories in 1944. In 2180, North Koreans who have reached the age of 3,000 will receive a salary from the Russian Federation. As the serious news gets weirder, it may be time to move on to discussing how Russia is behaving insanely. Before moving on to the discussion of Biden, let's start with the madness of Russia. Perhaps the time has come to create a party Mad Russia, given that a round table was held in the State Duma to counter the spread of Satanism. By the way, I can finally quote. Today is the day of quoting bad Russians in a good sense. I quoted Rogozin to you, and now I will dare to quote Ksenia Sobchak to you again in a good sense. Here is a direct quote, verbatim, from her Telegram channel. The State Duma has convened a round table and is discussing Satanism. And Biden was not so bad in the debate. That is, she understands that. Always prove in absentia, Ksenia Sobchak only one thing, so that I try to convince her that she should stop believing that she lives in a state, that the Russian Federation is an inferior state, a fake state. She is still trying to find signs that, look, we have trolleybuses running, this is temporary. If trolleybuses run, then it is temporary. If not trolleybuses, then also temporarily. On Monday, the State Duma held a round table on countering the spread of Satanism. The participants called on the parliament to understand that they are governing Russia. They called for the recognition of Satanism as an extremist movement, and its manifestations were found in the speeches of Philip Kirkorov, Olga Buzova, and Insta Samka. The round table was held by the Duma Committee for the Development of Civil Society and Religious Associations. Director Alexander Barakin said that the spirit of Satanism is in the song of Insta Samka. Behave immorally, do not set spiritual and moral goals for yourself and you will be rewarded, you will have expensive cars. Such mechanics are the most frightening and carry the spirit of Satanism, Barakin believes. Not only Satanism should be banned, but also child-free, trash streams and radical feminism, Ivanishko said. He is involved in the preparation of a lawsuit to the Supreme Court to recognize the International Movement of Satanists as an extremist organization. Ivanishko asked participants to share materials demonstrating enduring connections with Satanist organizations, Luciferians, devil worshippers, theistic and atheistic Satanists. Listen, Rostov-on-Don again. I didn't know, when I just told you about Rostov-on-Don and the leg trade, that horns also end up in Rostov-on-Don. In the schools of Rostov-on-Don, educational events were held, which were organized by an organization on the pages of which there was an advertisement for the Church of Satan. Rostov became a platform for open trade in all sorts of nonsense, both legs and horns. And all this in this unfortunate Rostov. I am very interested in trash streams, child-free, radical feminism. I haven't heard of trash streams yet. Who knows, write to me on Facebook down there or somewhere what trash streams are. Maybe I'll do it too. If you can't do it in Russia, then you have to. You just have to. But I've never done a trash stream before, and I've never seen it myself. Executor, Director of the public organization Chelyabinsk Residents. He called for tougher responsibility for foul language. People are against honey, right? Rock against drugs. Chelyabinsk residents are against obscenities. Chelyabinsk residents are against obscenities. Songs with foul language are heard. Children watch cartoons where we, adults, see some kind of subtext. This must be fought, and you don't see the subtext in 11-year-old girls. I see it. Such content prevents the introduction of the ideology of spirituality, morality, and patriotism. It's time to break this vicious circle. The speech ended with applause. It seems to me that in general, those people who have gathered for such a round table, they savor all this, you know. That is, people sit and savor different species. How did they know all this? How did they know that they sell horns, that some kind of circle needs to be broken, that the Church of Satan has opened there, that there is a trash stream? Were they all sitting, watching trash streams, or what? Listen, this news is just kind of crazy, it never ends. The head of the executive committee of the Cultural Front movement, Leoniev, called for the introduction of not only administrative, but also criminal penalties for adherents who spread the extremist ideology of Satanism and officials who are inactive in the ability to do so, but who are inactive contribute to the fact that we will appear at the concerts of Buzova and Kirkorov. Got it? That is, when a person sticks colored stars on himself, there should be criminal liability for this. The official allowed it. Deputy of the State Duma, former commander of the airborne troops, well, former, because I think we've already killed the current one at the front, right? Colonel General Sharmanov at the end of the round table, he is the chief for Satanism. The former commander of the airborne forces was appointed chief. That's right. The main Satanist and the commander of the airborne forces in Russia are the same person. Logical, right? He promised to preserve the state and create conditions for future generations, reproaching his beloved, this is the Minister of Culture, and Peskov for participating in demonic events. Just like that, the former commander of the airborne forces reproaches the press secretary of the president of the so-called Russia, Putin, for participating in satanic events. No, well, that's all you. Woody Allen is supposed to make a film based on this roundtable called Everything You Wanted to Know About the Russian Federation, but were too embarrassed to ask. Well, another separate news from the same place, by the way, here. You know, yesterday our Ukrainian journalist Dmitry Gordon was sentenced to 14 years in prison in Russia. And this is what I thought. Well, you sentenced Dmitry Gordon today. Gordon, thank God, we have it in Kiev. He is threatened by missiles, he is threatened by a bacillus, and what are you trying to infect us with? Typhus and cholera. Typhus and cholera threaten Gordon. Russian missiles threaten. For your 14 years, I think you are making threats, as Mayakovsky said. In this situation, today, apparently, the war will end, we will defeat the Russians, and who will take the interview? Until now, all famous Russians were interviewed by Gordon. I need to find some interesting interview with one of the Russians, it is with Gordon. After the war criminals who will be interviewed before death will come to Shoigu and say, what do you want for lunch before you die? He will tell me without lunch, but I can give an interview to Gordon. He will not tell Gordon, he can't, Gordon will not come. Why? And he was given 14 years, he will not come. But this will be the last wish of each of them, they all want to go down in history, right? Putin, Shoigu, all this Sobyanin and everyone before hanging, they will all want to give interviews in order to somehow go down in history, to explain that they are heroes, and so on, and who will they give interviews to? Heroes, etc., and to whom they will give interviews, not Solovyov, rightly so, not Simonyan, who will be in the same one, on the same axis, not hanging, as she herself admits, Gordon, they will want to give them, so they are short-sighted when they give 40 huge interviews to our leading journalists, it seems to me so. Well, now everyone should be given 14 years old. So, this is the sentence, which means that 70% of the inhabitants of Sweden are sentenced to 14 years, 98% of the inhabitants of Finland were sentenced by the Russian military court to 14 years in prison. And they will just say, well, since we need to arrest the whole of Finland, the entire population of Finland, because they all want the death of Putin and Lukashenko, let's just build such a cell, such a grid around the whole of Finland, let them all be imprisoned. So like? Or maybe the whole globe, except Russia. We must build such a grid around the entire globe, except for Russia. Everyone wants the death of Putin and Lukashenko. Then how will it turn out? You just need to build a grid around Russia. And it turns out that from the point of view of Russians, everyone is behind bars. We look, oh, the Finns are behind bars, oh, the Mongols are behind bars, Poles behind bars, Ukrainians are behind bars. It was in the book Physicist's Joke. I remembered. Such a physical joke for nerds. Nerds will understand me now. I was a nerd at school myself. How to catch a lion using mathematical methods? Build a cage around you, and then invert the space relative to the cage. It turns out that you are on the outside, the lion is on the inside. But this is a nerd joke. Don't laugh. You don't have to laugh at her. Yes, what am I talking about? Cholera. I am talking about cholera because yesterday I first raised this topic that there may be cholera and plague in the Russian troops, and therefore Russian propagandists tell us that we will have cholera and plague. It turned out that they also arranged all this in Mariupol, as they say on Mariupol websites. There is no point in this. This is Russian propaganda for panic. But be careful, cholera like Vibrio has been found in Mariupol reservoirs. The Kalmus River near the village of Sadki and the Mosta Post, the Kalchik River in the area of the old dispensary building, the sea beach in the area of the shipyard are at risk. Doctors strongly recommend avoiding swimming in these places. It is important to note that Vibrio cholera-like does not cause cholera, it is an intestinal infection. The head of Rospotribnadze for the DPR in Mariupol says that we have cholera, and he believes that the cholera was brought by the Russians. But there was no cholera before the Russians came to Mariupol. I said, stay away from them like lepers. Comrades, my friends in the occupied territories, I mean Mariupol residents, Ukrainians, if you meet a Russian, it is better to cross to the other side of the road, and it is better not to go out at all if there is a Russian there. They are all like lepers who came to the occupied territory. But you have to be like this to come there from Russia today. Well, in Russia, they are creating a center, the National Center of Russia. It was Putin who signed the decree yesterday. An expo center for Russia's achievements will be created in the Central Exhibition Complex Expo Center on Krasnoprezhnenskaya embankment. As the director of the exhibition, Russia said, the center will collect the best that the Russian Federation has created. Well, I think that Mariupol cholera should be exhibited simply in the main building, the main hall of the exhibition of Russia's achievements. Well, we can say for sure that Russia has definitely achieved, it has definitely brought cholera to Mariupol. Other achievements of Russians, if you know, you can tell me, I just don't know what else can be there. And what else has Russia done in its long 34-year history? It brought cholera to Mariupol, demolished Bakhmut. We know this, the inhabitants. For example, today is the day when there will be a maximum power outage. Apparently, according to the black and grey schedules, electricity is cut off due to the heat plus 32 in Kiev. And nuclear power plants are under repair, and the most severe shutdowns are today. The toughest schedule is that the Russians have deprived us of electricity. It is terribly hot, and I am sure that in recent days many old people have died from heat and stuffiness. In the cities of Ukraine, I think, thousands of old people died. They were killed by the Russians. Today, yesterday, tomorrow they will kill you. This, the fact that they deprived us of electricity. From today, July 1st, the aggressor country of the Russian Federation becomes the chairman of the UN Security Council for a month. Those on duty in this decrepit detachment change every 15 months. So this is Russia's second chairmanship after its attack on Ukraine. 15 months ago, someone was still indignant. But now, apparently, everyone is already used to it. This presidency is contrary to common sense. You know what I'm talking about, right? Russia, the presidency of the UN Security Council, is in the immediate place. For example, Hungary chairs the European Union, Russia chairs the UN Security Council. It contradicts common sense so much that it is almost ridiculous. This is further proof that both the UN itself and its Security Council have long been a hopelessly outdated system that needs to be reformed, if not eradicated. In the meantime, we have to put up with this theater of the absurd. On its stage in July, Russia has planned several performances. On the stage, we mean the UN Theater of the Absurd, including a meeting under Lavrov's chairmanship on the Middle East settlement. That is, the main anti-Semite of the world will deal with the Middle East settlement and building a stable world order, fair and democratic. Well, everything is as they like. When will we hear from this dusty stage? Dad asked me to tell you all that the theater is closing. We are all sick. Dear non-viewers, dear viewers, I pass it on. The theater of NATO. This is the UN. It's time to close. We are all sick, and the Sheitelman channel must flourish. I will be instead of the UN if you subscribe to the Sheitelman channel, if you like this video. And now 453. Thank you very much. Thousands turn into 454.